Hey, welcome in to another podcast, Beyond Hiawatha, the official podcast of Hiawatha Youth Camp and the Billy Walker Evangelistic Association. We are very glad to have you joining with us today. And this is the podcast where we just kind of go through talking to people who have been a part of the ministry of Hiawatha Youth Camp from just recent past or actually going back a few decades. And that's going to be the case today as we are really excited to welcome in Brian Chandler from all the way out on the West Coast. He is joining us from California today, and he's been there for a while, but as you can tell, he's still a Go Blue fan. Brian,
Oh,
welcome
yeah.
in.
Man, it is great to be with you today, Billy. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. Excited to see you. It's been a minute
Yes,
since we were together, but our paths go back quite a ways. And
sure do.
in fact, we have officially Brian and I butted heads at Hiawatha. In true story. I gave him a pretty good gash, and he gave
You
me a
did.
pretty good knot on the head. And we were both thinking about hospitalization there at one point on the basketball court.
Yes,
So yeah, we've got a few memories. And Brian, I hear you're still playing today, so that's pretty awesome.
I am trying to stay in shape at this age.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. So, hey, Brian, we just want to start off by finding out where did the connection to Hiawatha begin for you, and how did you find yourself on this, desolate piece of Upper Peninsula land, but yet calling it home for the summer for the next few? How did you get there, and what's one of your first memories of being there?
Okay, well, how I got there is I was attending a camp called Camp Kobiak. I don't know if you've heard of that camp before,
Sure.
but Camp Kobiak, I was going there, and that's where I received Christ actually at the age of 12 years old. But my sister, she used to go there along with my two older brothers, and she decided to go to a different camp called Camp Hiawatha. That was probably a couple of years earlier before me. And anyway, she encouraged me to go to Camp Hiawatha. And so at the age of 13 years old, I no longer attended Camp
Wow.
Kobiak. I went to Camp Hiawatha.
Yeah.
And what I loved about the camp when I went the first time at 13, I remember I love sports so much. I love playing the sports, but then the spiritual emphasis that you guys made at Camp Hiawatha made such a profound impact in my life, at the age of 13 years old.
Hmm.
And my life was changed just in a powerful way that week, that first week at camp. And I remember I wanted to stay 2 weeks, but my mom said no. But my brother Scott, who was there with me, said that he could stay 2 weeks. And so I remember sitting in the back of the bus as I was about to leave camp. I was just bawling. My brother put his arm through the window and he said, "Hey, Brian, it's going to be all right. Maybe next summer you can come 2 weeks." And and I did. I came back 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and I came back 2 weeks every summer after that. So,
Wow, that
yeah,
is
just a
awesome.
great blessing.
So she let your brother stay for 2 weeks.
Yeah, he got to stay, but I didn't. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah,
Oh, that's great. And that's great that he reaches his hand and Brian, it's going to be okay.
it's going to be okay as I'm pouring, bawling.
See you around, little brother.
See you around, man. Have a good one. Well, I
Oh,
enjoy myself here another week at Hiawatha.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Did you come now, did you come with the church from Grozeal?
Um, we didn't know it was such a small church. We didn't have a youth group. I think
Okay.
my mom
You were
drove
just
me
coming
up
on your
to
own.
yeah, drove me up in the Camp Hiawatha bus, picked me up and drove me up from there. So
Yeah,
wherever that was,
Claire.
I can't remember. But
Used
yeah,
used to pick up kids at Claire.
yeah, that was it. Yeah, my mom
Yep.
would take me up there every summer.
Okay.
So yeah,
That's awesome. So then, you're a camper, but you made the transition to staff. As I recall, I think you also probably you were a Mr. Hiawatha at some point in that camper juncture.
yes, Mr. Hiawatha, 1979.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
a few
Pretty
years
awesome.
ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Were
pretty
you
sure the
the
plaque with my name on it burned up when the Miracle
Well,
Building burnt
yeah,
down.
I'm afraid when it went down, everything like that kind of got lost with it,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But yeah, your name was on that plaque for a few
it
years.
was.
So and that probably at that point in time, there were some pretty decent prizes and
Oh
scholarships that
yeah,
went with that.
it was. It
Um,
was great. Yeah, I got a
so
trophy. I got all kinds of gifts, and then I got a scholarship. I think something like 10 different Christian colleges I could have
yeah,
attended.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, that's awesome. So now you went from camper, finally jumped in on staff, and what do you remember about that, especially that first season as a staff member?
Um, wow. I just remember how awesome it was that God had called me into ministry, and now I was serving the Lord in ministry for the first time as a camp counselor.
Yeah.
And of course, I had to sing with the rest of the staff, even though I can't carry a tune. I was still part of the choir, and I enjoyed that. I guess we didn't call ourselves the choir, but anyway, I remember, that, and
Yep.
us performing on every Saturday night, along with whatever guest artist was there. And of course, then
Yeah.
Billy would say, "And your choice for Mr. Hiawatha 1979, Brian Chandler." Everyone claps, and I turn red, on the stage and all that. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
great memories.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, you had to be a captain in there. Do you remember the name of your team?
Uh, I think the first summer it was Brian's boa constrictors, and our song was "Crush them, crush them, crush them to the ground, crush them, crush them, crush them to the ground." And then another summer, I think it was Chandler's Chargers. I was a team captain for 4 summers, and I was 4
Okay.
0, never lost.
4-0. That's a pretty good
4 0,
record.
Billy. It's a pretty
Yeah.
good record.
Yeah, that is that beats mine, that's for sure. And I think it probably beats most. That's pretty good, undefeated.
Yeah.
So you found yourself self on staff then for 4 seasons, is that right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And that sounds like it was college years then for you.
Yeah,
While
there was
most of it.
college years, and then I went away to seminary. I think I came back and I served one more summer on staff. So it was like 3 years,
Nice.
and then there was a few years off, and I came back one more summer when I was a little older.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. Can you remember just a couple of the speakers or anything like that really made an impact?
yeah. Ron Hafer, this small little
Yeah,
man from California, Biola University,
yeah,
and the message that always stuck out to me was he preached a series on Gideon. And he always taught Gideon being the small man because he was a small guy,
yeah.
and could relate to all that. And man, it really brought the Old Testament alive for me as a teenager when I heard him talk about Gideon and some of Gideon's experiences. And the Bible just really came alive for me. And then there was another guy from California. There's a lot of good speakers from California. Miles Ginskow. Miles
Yeah.
Ginskow.
Yep.
And I don't remember all his messages, but I remember he was such a funny speaker and captured my attention.
He
And
was.
I remember buying those little cassette tapes, and I listened to his message so much they wouldn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And that's how much I liked him. And
Yep.
I don't remember the guy from California. Maybe you can help another guy. And he talked about the God in the box. Do you remember the guy, the God in the
Howard,
box?
yeah, actually, it's funny because on the first podcast, we talked about this. Howard Hugo.
Yes, Howard Hugo.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember his name. Yeah,
Yeah, Howard Hugo. And
yeah,
yeah, he gave that message on God in the Box.
yeah. Stays with
And
me today.
yeah, it
And
does.
I'm
I
going to
mean,
use that in some of my own preaching. That's great, man.
sure, sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, he delivered that message too. But we were trying to figure out because the first summer that Howard came, actually, um, Ron Hafer is the one who referred us to Miles Ginsko. And then Miles is the one who said, "Hey, you know what? You need to have this guy named Howard Hugo out here."
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And Howard came out and he had preached at our home church in Southgate in the morning.
Uh-huh.
But the service at night didn't start until 8 p.m. up at the
Hmm.
camp. So, he
Hmm.
had plenty of time to get there. But back in that day, no GPS, no cell phones, nothing. And he somehow got lost. And
Oh,
I
no.
mean, the service starts and he's not there. And it was like a good 30, 40 minutes in, and
Oh,
dad's
my
getting
gosh.
ready to go into the message. And they had people stationed all the way out to the caretaker's cabin to let him
Oh,
know if a car's coming. And finally,
wow.
the signal comes. Here comes Howard. He comes running down the stairs and
Oh my gosh.
went
Wow.
on stage and just delivered it
Yeah.
and just made an impact and a statement with that first message. So yeah,
That's
pretty
great.
cool.
Yeah, cool
Pretty
stuff.
cool. Um, Tuesday, Thursday, of course, was always a pretty
Yeah,
important uh,
yeah,
part of the Hiawatha schedule. And
yeah.
do you recall any of those messages that made an impact? And I know you had mentioned that you were called into ministry.
Yeah.
And did that kind of happen at Hiawatha?
It did. I would say most weeks that I was there, at least the first week, because I told you I stayed a lot of times the second week when I got older. I pretty much went forward most Tuesday or Thursday nights during the week. You know, God was always convicting me about something, some sin in my life, something I needed to get right, whatever it was. And man, I wanted to be obedient, and so I remember many times going forward and just trying to get things right in my relationship with the Lord, my heart with the Lord. But yeah, let me share. When I graduated from high school, I decided to come back to Hiawatha one last time. So I'm 18 years old. Um, my dad owned his own produce business, and so I just thought I was going to, work for my dad.
Hmm.
But I was going to go to camp one last time, Hiawatha. And so when I went, I brought two friends that I graduated from high school with. Neither of these friends knew the Lord as their personal savior.
Wow.
And that week changed my life and changed their lives. It was on a Tuesday night that I went forward and I rededicated my life to Christ. And then on Thursday night, your dad preached a message on God's call on your life to full-time Christian ministry.
Sure.
And man, I never ever thought about serving the Lord in ministry full time. But very clearly, God's Holy Spirit spoke to me that night. And man, I don't even remember getting up, but I do know I got to my feet and I ran to the front of the auditorium that night. And I said, Lord, I give you my life. I give you my gifts. I give you my future. God, use me in ministry in the ways that you want to. And I really felt that week that God impressed upon my work to work specifically with youth. And
Hmm.
so I've had a long call to youth work. I think that came out of that week where I served for about 25 years in different capacities in youth ministry. But let me back into my two friends that came that week. Jerry Collins was our counselor, and
Wow.
they didn't go forward on Tuesday night. But I let Jerry know that, hey, I want my friends to come to Christ. And so in time that he spent with them throughout the week and just sharing his own faith, both of those guys came to faith in Christ that week.
Wow.
And then I got to tell you, one of the guys reached out to me. I lost track with him for years, but just in the last few years, he reached out to me on Facebook. His name's Rob, and he's a dentist. And he said, Brian, he said, I needed to get a hold of you. He says, because God made a profound impact in my life at Camp Hiawatha that week that you invited me to go there with you.
Isn't that
And when I
something?
received Christ, my life changed from that point on. He says, I don't know if you knew this or not, but my parents were going through a divorce.
Hmm.
And I was really searching. And that week I found Christ. And he says, I have to tell you, now that I'm a dentist, I've wanted to serve the Lord in ministry, but haven't been able to do that. But he said, every year I go to a third world country and I spend about 2 weeks free dental work for people there. And then I
Wow.
share my faith in Christ with them.
Wow. That is awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that really is. And that's part of the reason for this podcast, Brian, just
Yes.
to see the ripple effects of
Yes.
decisions that people made at Hiawatha and how it just yeah, it's changed their life and the lives of so many others. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's an incredible illustration, and I appreciate you sharing that. So the other awesome thing, of course, Brian, is I mean you are one of the very few that has been a camper, a counselor, and then a youth director that brought young people to Hiawatha.
Yes.
Because you jumped right into ministry and
Yeah.
and started bringing your young people as a youth director. Then very shortly thereafter.
Yes.
So, and then one other aspect of the continued ministry of Hiawatha is at some point or another, and this is now um, a few years, and I don't know how many. How many were you a youth pastor here in the Detroit area?
I was a youth pastor for just 3 years at Girls View Baptist.
Okay, and that's when you were bringing young people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then somehow you make your way west.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, Ron Hafer, let me share this. Ron Hafer encouraged me to go to seminary at Talbot, which was the grad school at Biola, where he was serving as the camp pastor.
yep.
So that's how I ended out in California.
Okay. So you're in California, and that's where you stayed.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
It's where I met my wife, and we've been married over 30 years and had our kids here and all that. So yeah, I pretty much stayed in ministry out here.
Yeah. Yeah. You were done with the Michigan winters at that point in
I
time.
was.
So,
Fell in love
but
with California.
you also met a young man that you enjoyed his ministry, and your thought was, you know what? This is another one of those California guys that could have an impact way back in the mitten. And so you called Dad and share a bit of that conversation and how
Okay.
that transpired.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you how I even got to know Brad Jerkovich. I'm a youth pastor in Redlands, California. There was a junior high campus just a few blocks from our church. I said, man, I got to reach kids for Christ at that school. And so I started a campus life club at that junior high school.
Hmm.
And the first week I had a Bible study there, Brad Jerkovich came into the room. I had never met him before, and he just was the funniest guy I'd ever met. He was so passionate about his faith in the Lord as just a young teenager, and I just fell in love with the kid.
Huh.
And he went to another church, but he went to many of our church functions, youth events and stuff over the year, because many of my friends were friends with him and were going to school with him. And then, he graduated and went on to Bible college and all that. But we stayed in touch over the years. And let's see, he started a ministry called Be the Light Ministries, which was a youth evangelistic ministry. And he was a couple of years into this, and the ministry was growing, and he needed someone with some organizational skills to come in and help him. And he said, hey, Brian, would you join me as my director of ministries? And so I joined Be the Light Ministries, and we traveled around the country. We would get him booked at junior and senior high campuses, and he would do his little shtick at the school during the daytime. And then on a Friday night, we would do a small stadium event where he would share the gospel with teenagers. And so we did that for a number of years. And then I contacted Billy, just reached out to him, and he said, hey, Billy, I'm working with this guy, Brad Jerkovich. He is funny. He's passionate. He's on fire for the Lord. I think the campers at Hiawatha would love him. And so I sent Billy a VHS tape, if you remember what those are, and
Sure.
sent it to him in the mail. And he listened to it. And shortly after that, he got back to me. He said, hey, Brian, I'd love to have Brad come and share at camp this summer. And I know he went that first summer, and I think a number of summers after that he spoke there.
So we're going to try to have Brad on here in the not too distant future.
Oh, great.
So
Awesome.
I don't want to waste all the Brad Jerkovich stories, but at the same time, you two come up there for the first summer and you come with him, which was a good idea
Yes.
because you knew your way around and
Yes.
the camp schedule and all that kind of thing. And plus you knew Brad, and Brad,
Yeah.
when he comes on the scene, like you said, he's there, right?
Yes.
Brad has a presence.
Yes. Bigger
But
than life.
he comes in and I just remember him talking all up and down from the time he got there on Sunday afternoon about how you and he were going to take on me and my brother in basketball. And you were going that you guys were going to wipe the court, man. You've never seen.
Talking smack.
Yeah, he's just talking all kinds of smack, and I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a good game. And we get out there to warm up, and he can't shoot his way out of a.
No, he's terrible. He was terrible. He wanted me to carry us as a team.
My gosh. I was like, what in the world? And then he just starts cracking up, of course. And But yeah, Brad became a fixture there for a
Yeah.
few years, and not only at the camp, but came in and did crusade at our church a couple times,
Yeah.
and Dad just yeah he loved Brad's evangelistic
Yes,
heart because
absolutely.
even though
Yes,
Dad was camp director pastor, he was an evangelist at heart, and
sure was.
so yeah, I think he
Yeah.
could see a lot of his younger self in Brad. And
Yep.
but you were a good one to have around because whenever Brad was telling jokes, you could rely on Brian to be like his Ed McMahon down there,
Absolutely. I'd always laugh at everything he said.
help get the crowd going. And boy, his stories of you guys traveling, and I know your mom, bless her heart, she's reached heaven's shore now, but his stories of traveling
Yeah.
across the bridge with your mom, listening to nothing but Gaither homecoming radio and that kind of thing. Doris, please.
Oh my gosh, what great memories. Oh
Oh
yeah.
man, he was a riot. But yeah, we love him and love you for introducing him. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you.
Again, that's just it's unique, Brian. The ripple effects
Yes.
that all that kind of stuff has.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one more thing, and then we'll get off the Brad Jerkovich topic.
No, that's fine.
Past Sunday, my wife gave the announcements at the end of the service, and partly because whenever she steps up there, people tune in, and we just thought, we need some
Yeah.
buy-in on the announcents here, and not
There you
just
go.
hurry up and get this done. So she gets up there and she does the announcements, and she did it well, of course. But when she dismissed the people, I
Oh
was
no.
walking out of the auditorium, and she said, "Be the light," and
You're kidding
I
me.
just started
Oh my
laughing. I'm
gosh,
like,
that's
"Oh man,
hilarious.
I have not heard that phrase in a while," but
Oh, that is
reminded
funny.
me of those days with you and Brad.
Yes, that was great.
So, give us a little bit of the history, Brian, since that time period, because you have been out in California for quite a
Yes.
while, and you have had God has blessed you with a wide and varied ministry,
Yeah.
including directing your own camp for a
Yes.
while and pastoring, and just give us a bit of the history of what God's done in your life since you got out there.
Okay. Um, when I left seminary, I knew a friend of mine, actually one of the guys that was a student also with me at Talbot, and he was the director of a camp called Laurel Pines, and he said, "Hey, Brian, if you're not doing this summer after you get out of school, would you come be my program director for the summer?" And it was 8,300 feet in the air near a beautiful lake called Big Bear Lake. And man, I said,
Wow.
I'd love to. I'm not doing anything this summer. And so I signed up, became the program director that summer. And then through that, God opened the doors for me to serve at Bethany Church in Redlands, California. And that's, of course, where I met Brad down in that area.
Okay.
And then served there for a number of years. And I think for about 5 years I was there. And the association was looking for a new camp director of Laurel Pines, and they interviewed me, and I got the position. And I was actually working still as a youth pastor at Bethany Church while being the camp director at Laurel Pines. I did that for a few years crossover, and then I became the full-time director at Laurel Pines. I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And then I met my wife, Michelle. We got married. She was working an hour from the camp. We didn't see much of each other. And so I thought, yeah, I think God's telling me it's time to end my camping ministry, at least for right now. And
Yeah.
so I stepped down from there. And then that's when God opened the doors for me to work with Brad at Be the Light Ministries. And I worked with him for a few years, left there. And then we traveled from Southern California up to the Bay Area. My wife's family was from the Bay Area, and we wanted to be closer to them. And so I started looking for some churches in the Bay Area. And God opened the door at Trinity Baptist Church in Vacaville. And so that kind of
Yeah.
got us up to the Bay Area. And I was there for a number of years. Matter of fact, I think I had you and Brad come in. Didn't you? You guys come in and do a revival for us?
You did. You were kind. You had Brad come in as the speaker, and I did the music. And then actually, a few years after that, One Voice came out there. Lori and I
Yeah,
were out there with our girls.
I remember that. That's when I met them
Uh,
and spent
and
time with them.
and again, this is dating everything, but we wound up doing a live video of that concert at Trinity.
Oh, I
And
didn't even remember that.
yeah, we did a live video, and it's one other thing I remember, Brian, is you had some kind of a fundraiser that was like a basketball game or something, um, the weekend that we got out there, and
Huh?
my oldest daughter was big time into basketball, and
Yeah.
she was enthralled with all of that, and you wound up taking us to some place for a burger. It was the first
Oh,
time
yeah.
we had that. Might have been, I don't know, In and Out or what, but
Foster's Freeze. That was Foster's
Foster's
Freeze.
Freeze. There it is. That's it.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was it.
that's
You
it.
loved that
So I
burger. It was a good
did.
one.
That was a good burger. Yeah, we had some good times out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you're in
So,
Vacaville for a while,
so
and
I
then
was there. Yeah, and then I served with Brad after. No, sorry, no, I after. Sorry, after Vacaville, I was in youth ministry for 25 years, and I was getting old. I couldn't do all nighters anymore. I was
yeah,
getting too old for it. I said, God, I think I'm ready to be a senior pastor. And
yeah,
I thought that was going to happen at Trinity Vacaville, but it didn't. And God impressed upon my heart to start a new work in Vacaville. And so I left the church and I planted Discovery Church. And first Sunday we had 156 people, and we were meeting in the gymnasium. God blessed us, and I saw them through the years in the gymnasium, and we grew enough where we bought a church building. We moved into that church building, and I was there about 7, 8 years, and then my wife was getting a job out of the area, and so we decided to go ahead and step down from that ministry at that time. And so we moved to the Santa Rosa area, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I still loved camping. And there was a little camp called Camp Cazadero. And I went and met with the director of the camp, and I said, hey, you guys don't have anyone raising money for your camp. Let me become your director of development and raise funds for your camp.
mm,
And he went ahead and hired me. I worked for him for about 2 years. During that 2 years, we were celebrating the 60-year anniversary of the camp. And Rick Warren was an old staff member there
oh my goodness,
at Camp Cazaderos, where God called Rick into full-time Christian ministry.
wow,
So my wife, she got a job out of the air, actually 2 hours from where I was pastoring in Healdsburg, and we moved 2 hours away. Some good things that were happening at the church. The church didn't want to lose me, so they decided to keep me on. And so I did the commute back and forth for a number of years.
mm,
And kept asking the Lord, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Have you released me from this ministry? And just looking for, what he was telling me, and circumstances and everything else, weighing all that. And I was having some health issues. Went in and saw the doctor, and he diagnosed me with bladder cancer.
mm,
And the MRI showed that there was this 5 centimeter mass in my bladder. It had pushed through the wall of the bladder. It was now in the muscle lining of my body. The doctor said, you're going to lose your prostate, you're going to lose your bladder, and you're going to have months of chemotherapy.
mm,
And so the prognosis didn't look good.
yeah,
And man, I was just blown away. I remember meeting with my family, just telling them what the doctor said and everything, and told them just that we just need to trust the Lord. God's always been faithful in the past; He'll be faithful now. We just need to trust Him through this. And I went and had a lot of people praying for me all across the country. Family members
yeah,
were fasting for my healing. I remember calling the elders and deacons in my church. We claimed James 5. They anointed me with oil. We prayed over me and asked God to heal me. And went in for surgery. Surgery went well. The doctor said, we'll know more when we get the pathology report. We had to wait 10 days for the pathology report. And I remember the day of the pathology report, we went to the doctor's office, went and sat in there, me and my wife, and the doctor comes down the hall and he opens up the door. And the first thing out of his mouth is, I've got good news for you. He's got this big smile on his face. And he says, Brian, our bladders have 3 layers. Interesting enough. It went through the first layer into the second layer, but it didn't go into the third layer and out into your body. He said, you get to keep your prostate, you get to keep your bladder, and no chemotherapy.
Wow.
So my doctor, every 3 months, I go in for a scan, and I've been cancer free every time, and now I'm 3 years cancer free right now, and just
Amazing.
praising God,
Yeah.
and been able to share that testimony with a number of people, and God's really used it in my life and now in the life of others. That God still performs miracles today.
Yeah. Amen. That's so awesome, Brian. That is really cool. Just as you look back, and man, what incredible ministry you have had the opportunity to be part of, so varied in so many
Yeah,
areas, and so many parts of the country now too. Uh,
yeah,
and also just to see the ripple effect, Brian, of even the relationships that you've had and how God has used that and
yeah.
continues to use it in ministry all over the place. Is there a thread that you kind of look back on? From those teen years and even young adult years at a little place an hour north of the Mackinac Bridge called Hiawatha Youth Camp. Is there a thread from there that God's kind of woven throughout your life that you still hang on to today?
Yeah. Man, I have to say, I don't know where I'd be spiritually or in ministry apart from Camp Hiawatha.
Mm,
Because when I was going, I told you at the age of 13 years old, we didn't have a youth group at our small little Baptist church. But my mom drove me up, and the camp bus took me up to camp. And I did that every summer, and never had a youth pastor, never had a youth group to be a part of. But
yeah,
God used Hiawatha to make a profound spiritual impact in my life. And again, that's where God called me into ministry. And then, of course, my relationship with Billy, your dad,
yeah,
started at that time. And just I think what Billy has meant to me over the years, because he always stayed in touch with me. I don't know if you knew this, but when I went through my ordination, your dad was part of the ordination council for my ordination,
yeah.
and it was 3 hours of intense grilling as they were asking me all kinds of questions.
Oh
They asked me to
man.
leave the room, and Billy met with all the other pastors that day, and he said, "Brian, they didn't want to ordain you," and he said, "I went to the mat for you." He said,
I'll bet
he
he
said
did.
he did, man. He said, Brian, he said, "Hey, look at Brian's ministry here. He's got 40, 50 kids coming to this small church. It's evident that Brian's gifted, called and gifted for ministry, man. Let's ordain the guy,
Yeah.
just because he's not a great theologian, which I never have been, never claimed to be, doesn't mean that we shouldn't ordain him to the gospel ministry."
Yeah.
And so I'd have to say, I might not be sharing this whole story with you today had it not been for your dad doing that for me that day.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
grateful for that. And then over the years, your dad always sent me encouraging handwritten notes. And those that knew Billy knew that he always did that when I
He
graduated
was
from
so good at that.
college, seminary, different ministries over the year, and
Yeah.
just a blessing to always get those handwritten notes from him, always encouraging me, always telling me he's praying for me.
Yeah.
And, so grateful for a place called Hiawatha.
Amen. Yeah, that's awesome, right? He was very proud of you and the ministry that you were part of, Brian, and the fact that you just hung in there and stayed the course and continued in ministry in varied ministry. He loved it when you became a camp director too. He thought that was pretty
That's
awesome.
it. That is
And
it.
so yeah, we're grateful for you, and I'm so thankful that you had a few minutes to share with us today, Brian. We will continue to pray for you as you
Thank you.
continue to make a difference in the lives of your family and ministry out there in California. And
Yeah.
you enjoy that California sun for all of us that are still back here in uh, in the cold and the winters of Michigan. Right,
We'll
but
do, man. We'll do. Thanks, Billy.
great to have you, and great to have all of you that were listening today. Thanks so much for joining with us. Love to have you subscribe. We put one of these out a couple times a month, and it's just awesome to hear some of what God has been doing and continues to do in the lives of so many because of the ministry of Hiawatha Youth Camp. Thank you for listening, and hope you'll join with us again next time for Beyond Hiawatha. God bless.